Hey, welcome back to Emerald City Comicon. My name is Mike Avila with SYFY WIRE, and we're just about ready to wrap things up, and we're going to end it with a really cool segment that I'm excited about, which is basically where Star Wars Uber collector Gus Lopez tells me that to stop bothering to collect anything Star Wars because you have it all.
I don't know about all of it.
You have one of the world's great Star Wars collections, and I don't mean just toys and action figures and things like that, but you collect a lot of screen-used props and,
Correct, yeah.
and clothing and wardrobe and whatnot. The first thing I want to ask you about is one of your more recent pickups, and it's your latest collecting obsession, the crew jackets from Star Wars movies.
Yeah, no, I've, you know, as I've said many times before, I feel like there's still a lot of awesome vintage stuff to be found. It's not completely dried up. And so in the past year was a very good year for me. I had, in the prop store auction, one of the bigger kind of prop dealers did a big auction I got. There's an Ewok log that was used as a special effects miniature to crush one of the chicken walkers. And then there were Han Solo's or Harrison Ford's goggles, his welding goggles from Empire Strikes Back, which were kind of awesome. And then actually the big, you know, kind of piece in the auction was Harrison Ford's jacket from Empire Strikes Back. Didn't sell in the auction, but afterwards I discussed it with them and I ended up picking that up too. So that was pretty major.
That's quite the haul.
Yeah, it was quite a haul. And then there was another auction where I picked up a TIE pilot helmet used in the first film. So it was a pretty good year. I had a good year finding stuff.
Aside from the stuff that you picked up at auction,
yeah.
Tell me about an item that you found out in the wild. You did some research. You put on your Indiana Jones fedora and you went digging for it.
There's a couple things in the past year, like you know, for example, one of the earliest products ever sold for Star Wars were these mugs made by Jim Rumpf, who was a sculptor who had done this line of, he'd done like King Kong mugs and other kind of creature mugs. And he did Obi-Wan Kenobi, Vader, and what was the other? Yeah, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Vader, and Chewbacca. And basically, I ended up getting the sculpt for the Obi-Wan mug from his niece, who had inherited his estate. And I also got some original art. So this was like one of the earliest Star Wars promotions, some of the coolest sculpture art. And I was able to obtain that in the past year, which is something, you know, just through networking was able to find, and I love it.
Is it more rewarding when you find something like that in that process as opposed to, okay, I'm just going to go to the auction website and outbid somebody?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I actually prefer not to buy things at auction. Usually it's too expensive. And you know, you're dealing with intense competition. What's nice about finding it from original sources is the provenance is always really good. You usually get a fair deal out of it, and the stories behind it. You get the real like context in the story. Whereas sometimes at auction they abridge the story, and it's harder to really understand. And a lot of times the story is a big part of it. Like last night I had some folks over and I was touring, you know, various parts of our house, and it's like you want to tell a story about each piece, and so getting it directly way better for that.
Are you finding a lot of these things that you're unearthing are coming from people that had a connection to the films or their relatives? Or are they in black hole collections from the early wave of collectors?
Yeah, it's mostly people who worked on the films, or in some cases their descendants, like, because many of them have like passed on, and it's like their families are going through their estates and saying, oh, what's this stuff? And then the stuff sort of becomes available for sale. Black hole collections do exist, but that's not so much yet that it's some collector we didn't know that had all these things, and then it comes to light. That does happen, but it's pretty rare so far, it seems, relative to the number of people who had some connection to Star Wars, who kept things, and then their families or themselves put it up for sale.
What area of vintage Star Wars collecting is hot right now? The area that you're seeing competition for?
Oh yeah, like, so vintage toy prototypes is like continued to stay hot the last few years and got insanely hot in the past year. In fact, one of the reasons I was able to pick up things like the Harrison Ford jacket was I did something I rarely do, which I let go of a few pieces this year from the toy prototype space, because the amount of money people are willing to pay for that now is like astronomical. And so I was like, all right, well, I could sell a couple pieces and then focus that on like props and costume pieces. So I even did that, which I rarely do. I hate letting go of stuff. I famously hate letting go of stuff, which drives collectors nuts because they all want the stuff, but I don't want to let
That's why you're a collector.
Yeah, that's right.
I mentioned at the beginning that you collect crew items.
Yep.
Specifically, you've been tracking down the crew jackets from the crew that shot the scenes that doubled as Hoth. They were shot in Norway in The Empire Strikes Back. These are really cool, bright blue jackets. Why are you obsessed with tracking these down?
Well, I just love it. It's like my favorite crew piece because it's basically a custom altered jacket. They took a Norwegian ski jacket and then put all these Star Wars patches on it, and they customized them for each crew member with a nameplate. And this year, I had 2 at the beginning of the year. I have 4 of them now. And there aren't a whole lot of them in collections. There's probably like a dozen or so in collections. So I do feel like I'm kind of hoarding them at this point. But also this
now
year,
you're just showing off. Guys.
I'm just showing off. Now it's sort of like But they're actually reasons behind each one. They're slightly different. But I actually also helped out a little bit with Columbia, which is a company that licensed making replica versions of these jackets that they sold in the fall. And
they sold out like that.
They sold out like that, which is amazing for an obscure
cheap.
crew piece. Like you wouldn't think people, like the previous year, they had like Han, Luke, Leia jackets, which people know, it's ubiquitous. But like a crew jacket, you wouldn't expect that. Sold out instantly. But I loaned them one of my jackets for them to use as reference on it. And so that was kind of cool to help them out with that.
Did they throw you a replica one?
They did. They gave me a couple of them.
So you really got 5.
They gave me a couple, and my wife grabbed one. Actually, when they arrived, my wife grabbed one and just started wearing it every day. And she's like, I love this jacket. So I was down to one of them too, which is great. I got one
Leave something for the rest of us, guys. For goodness sake, you can't wear them all.
I know.
Are you wearing them each day of winter, a different coat?
I'm gonna put the vintage ones. I'm gonna put up. I have 2 of them up on, framed in on mannequins. I'm gonna do for the 4 of them, and then the newer one I'm gonna wear it once in a while.
They are eye-catching because of the bright blue.
They are.
In all seriousness, I wanted to buy one of those, and one they would have sold out in 2 seconds anyway. And my wife was like, "Are you out of your mind?" She saw how much the replica ones were.
People saw you stop you in the streets wearing those things. They actually are eye-catching. So.
Without giving away your secrets to tracking these things down, did you go through a crew list and track some of these guys down?
Oh yeah, I've done that. At this point, a lot of the crew members have been tapped. Lots of other people have done this at this point. What gets tricky though is finding, some of them are out off the grid, and some of them their relatives are the ones that have this stuff. So that gets much harder because to get the names of the relatives and so on. So I've actually done okay on that because I'm pretty visible in my collecting, so I get a lot of good incoming. I get people that worked on the films or people whose relatives worked on the films that contact me. It helps me get access to some of these relatives that have stuff.
What's left on the bucket list that's realistic, that's in reach? I know there's a fellow collector has the Death Star.
Yeah.
Model.
I have the Death Star model.
You
I own the Death Star model. I'm the one that owns the Death Star
model. Somebody else has told me this. Yeah,
somebody else
I'm getting my
probably
Uber Star Wars collectors mixed up. You have that one. What's
I don't
left
know.
on the bucket list?
A lot of times it feels like there's no limits, like in terms of a realistic bucket list. Like there was an item last year that I never would have put on my list because I didn't think it was feasible, which was there's a vehicle they made for the original Kenner line called the White Witch for the Droid series. Turned up this year and I picked it up, which we knew it had been created in prototype form, but no one thought it existed anymore. It was lost. So there's another Kenner thing that I know of was made, but no one knows if it exists. It's the Blockade Runner vehicle from the beginning of Star Wars. They actually made a toy for it, and so if I can find the prototype of that, that would be an awesome bucket list thing. I think for props, I would like to, I don't have a C-3PO mask, that would be kind of cool, or a lightsaber from the original trilogy. Those are sort of my top items that I'd love to find.
Those are nice goals to have.
They're tough. I mean, I may never find any of those things.
How's the cereal box hunt going?
Excellent.
What new country have you uncovered a box of Star Wars cereal from?
Well, let's see.
For those of you who don't know, by the way, one of his mad passions within the passion of Star Wars collecting is collecting Star Wars cereal boxes from all over the world, and they are all over the world.
Oh, yeah, they didn't. So in the past year, I did the usual blitz of Last Jedi stuff that kind of went into 2018. And then Solo had a very limited promotion, mostly in Europe and the US. So I did get a whole bunch of cereal boxes for those promotions. But one of the cool things in cereal in the past year was there was a vintage box from Australia, a Wheaties box from 1978 that I've been looking for decades, and I found one, and it completes my vintage run of Australian cereal boxes. So I have about It's probably like 20 different Australian cereal boxes, different sizes, different brands. And this was the very last one that I needed, which was the very first box they did in Australia. So I was stoked to like check that off, because it's, I mean, you can imagine it's hard enough to find US vintage cereal boxes, but in Australia, which is a country, it was a fraction of the population, and then of course being far away, like finding vintage cereal boxes, just impossible. So that was cool.
Is there one country in particular that you haven't found one cereal box from?
Not really, no. I've pretty much found them in every, I mean, I have, so when a movie release comes out, I have over 300 people that look for me all over the world. So I have multiple people in most countries.
You've got ringers.
I got ringers. I got people.
Cereal ringers.
I got people shopping for me all over the world. Like a new movie
That's
comes
amazing.
out. It's pretty funny.
That is great. Okay, lastly, at your home, where I assume you keep much of your collection, what's the piece that gets the most questions asked?
Well, the Death Star model, which you talked about, like that gets a ton of questions. I get a lot of questions about rocket-firing Boba Fett prototype, which was a sort of a legendary Kenner prototype that they never released to market. That gets a lot of comments. And then I have Boba Fett's backpack from Return of the Jedi. That gets a lot of comments because people are just huge Boba Fett fans, so they love that thing.
That is amazing. Gus Lopez, thank you so much for the time. It's always fun talking with you.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, guys. This is great. We have one more thing left. We're going to wrap up ECCC coming up in just a moment, so stick around.